So we all know that winter riding sucks. I'm going to give you 5 tips that you may not know on how to combat winter riding and stay safe. Let's get into it. So before we get started, I just want to say that wet, icy, black ice, snow, all that stuff is already accounted for. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the things that you might not know. Let's get this bad boy fired up, shall we? So we all know how dangerous drain covers are when the floor is wet, but what you might not think is actually that dangerous are cat's eyes. If you're not from the UK and you don't know what a cat eye is, I think they're called solar road studs. They're usually in between these white lines that shine up at night time. And if you've ever been out when it's wet, cold, icy, all things like that, and you go over them, you'll feel your tyres obviously not grip as they're made out of metal. And I've had it a few times where my back end has hit one and I've almost gone out. I don't know how severe it really is, but it feels horrible when it happens, so it's severe enough. So obviously if you're staying in your lane, you're going to be fine. But if you're ever in slow moving traffic and you want to filter and you go over that line, you're going to hit one. And it's just something to be aware of. Make sure you avoid hitting them. They're not in every gap of the white line, so if you can time it right, you can get in between them. But I had it a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I had it recently, where there was slow moving traffic and I went out to overtake the slow moving car, and there was an articulated lorry coming the other way. It wasn't close, it wasn't close by a mile, but I was aware that there was a lorry coming the other way. So I went out and then went past the car, tried getting back in, and because I was at an angle like I am now, if I was to go over, I couldn't actually get over the cat's eyes and back into the lane that I was originally in. And every time I tried, which was about 3 or 4 times, I kept hitting the cat's eyes and it kept bouncing me out the other way. And obviously where I knew this lorry was coming, I thought I better think of something quick. So what I did is I adjusted my angle and then went over it a bit more sharp, if that makes sense. So that's one thing you want to watch out for that not a lot of people actually speak about, is cat's eyes in the road can be very dangerous. So watch out for them. The second thing to watch out for, we've got a lovely day like today where the floor is pretty much dry. It's currently 5 degrees, but it has been below 0 last week. So shaded areas, I don't think a lot of people know about this, and not a lot of people actually talk about it, but shaded areas, obviously the sun doesn't get to the floor like it does in areas like this. So it's a nice dry day, but there's wet stuff everywhere. You go through a shaded area and that might be still wet underneath, it might be still icy underneath when the rest of the place looks dry. So don't let yourself get too confident on a day like this where everything looks dry, 90% of it is, but you go to a place where there's trees, obviously, like the forest where I'm at now. You go through a place where there's trees covering the road and you might have wet, icy conditions underneath that. So if you're approaching it, just take care, proceed with caution, go through it, because obviously we can't just stop if we're going at speed. Just take it easy, go through it, try keep your bike as upright as possible, because if it's on a bend, it's gonna sort of be the same as like a drain cover if that's on a bend, so you could slip out. And obviously where your tyres aren't as warm as what they usually are, they take ages to warm up in the cold. Just don't allow yourself to think it's fine and then you go into a shaded area where you could slip out. There is a shaded area up here which I don't know if it's going to be wet or dry, but I'm just going to assume that it is going to be wet underneath there, or at least not as dry as this. But you just want to, like I said, you want to take caution when going through places like that, especially through little tunnels or little bridges underneath them. Obviously a forest area like this where there's trees everywhere, just don't make a mistake in giving it too many beans and coming off. It will not be a fun day if that happens. See, we've got some tall trees here, I can see some shade in the road, and obviously the sun doesn't always get to every part of it, so you just want to be careful. There's a few shiny bits on the floor, as you can see there. They might be wet, they might not be, just try and avoid them if you can. Let's get on to number 3, baby. Number 3 is going to be road markings, obviously like these middle bits, this giveaway part. Jesus Christ, mate. Yeah, road markings you want to be careful of. Thank you. As where they're a smooth surface compared to the road, which is a bit more rough. Like all these, look, slow, those things. You want to be careful because they can be extra slippery in the wet, in the cold. If your wheels hit them at a certain angle, you could slip out. Most of these things are sort of common knowledge, but how common can it be if not a lot of people know it? You might know all of these, which is fine, but there's going to be some people that actually don't know these things. Like this on the floor here, 40. If I gave it some beans on that, and it was particularly cold or particularly wet, bad stuff can happen. But like I said, not everyone's going to know these things. I'm just trying to make this video to help out people that are, like me, stuck with a motorcycle, so I've got no other option but to ride. Which, I don't mind it, it's just you've got to take care. And usually when winter's coming up, I go on Google and Google winter riding tips, and it's always the same thing. It's always like, oh, watch out for the ice, watch out for the wet, watch out for this. It doesn't actually go into detail on things that happen in sort of real world scenarios. I know that ice, snow, all that stuff is obviously a real world scenario, and it does happen, but there's other things that aren't spoke about, and this is why I'm making this video, to help everyone out. There's a shaded area near where I live that's got road markings, and it's notoriously wet all the time, and it's on a bend, and the road markings there are a few arrows saying you can turn right, and continue on going straight. And every time I go down that way, I make sure, is that ice? Yeah, that's ice there, that shows how cold it has been. Every time I go down that way, so it's quite a sharp bend, I just I just avoid those road markings. Like I said, it's a shaded area as well, which I've already covered, so the sun never gets to it, and in the winter months like this, it's always wet. So I just make sure I slow down and take my time when I go around there, avoiding the road markings, because who wants to slip out? Let's get on to number 4, shall we? So next on our list is going to be grit salt. Grit salt's purpose is to prevent ice from forming, and if you've ever been out in conditions like that, you may not be aware, but the grit salt itself can actually be slippery as hell. And like I said, its main purpose is to prevent ice from actually forming. But I've seen it where, say one day I've gone down a road and there's grit salt everywhere, and then the following day I go down there and I assume that it's going to be fine because there's grit all over the road and it's been a very cold night the night before, but you go out, you expect it to be fine, and yet that grit has frozen. So never assume that the grit on the road is actually going to be fine and help you. Yeah, it helps a bit, but you'll have scenarios where you'll go out, it's been freezing, the grit from the night before has frozen. If it's got wet, the grit itself is slippery, even if it is dried up. It gets all over your bike, all over your gear. If you don't get it off pretty sharpish. It can cause a lot of damage. It serves its purpose, but come on, it doesn't really do too much. If you're in a car, it's sort of fine because you've got 4 wheels, but on a bike you add in some stuff that's meant to stop ice forming onto the road, which is sort of slippery by nature, and you go on 2 wheels and it's not fun. It's not fun at all. I've had it where sort of after a few days of it being gritted, when the cars and bikes go through, obviously it pushes all that grit to the side, and if you're filtering you get stuck in it, and it's sort of like if you've ever slipped on sand on like a smooth surface. If you've ever gone like to the beach in like Spain or something on holiday, and then you've got sand on you, and then you go to a place where there's a swimming pool and there's a bit of sand on the actual tiles around the pool. That's the sort of that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to explain what it's like. It's slippery as anything, like sand on a smooth surface. You're just gonna go arse over tit. So having grit isn't always the best thing, and you've just got to be aware that it's not going to be fine. See all this wet floor in that shaded area? Obviously this isn't shaded, but you've still got it everywhere. Here's the grit I'm on about, that can build up in the middle here as well. Some good examples here: wet floor, shaded area. Just put foot down. It's quite slippy, that. Little bit of grip to it, but not a lot. And last on our list is a bit of a double whammy, really. It's sort of part and parcel, but obviously conditions like this, you don't want to be going full pelt, as it's going to be wet everywhere. We've got less light in the day itself, so it's not really, you don't have a lot of warmth and a lot of sun to dry up the areas like this. Lovely little puddle there. But the double whammy is to be seen and to go slow, and it's better to be safe than sorry. But obviously we've got limited daylight, and in my case, when I'm going to work, I leave my house at 6:30 in the morning, and I usually am doing a 10-hour day, and I leave work at 6 o'clock. By that time it's dark, so in the morning it's dark, at night time it's dark, obviously. Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, you want to make sure you're seen. So there is no shame in wearing a high-vis vest or a high-vis jacket, high-vis gear, because in the daytime we all know what it's like. They don't see us anyway. So at night time, if you can make yourself a little bit more visible, there's no shame in it. I've had an experience where so I've got this thing that I got from work, which is a jumpsuit, a waterproof jumpsuit that I can wear over my bike gear, and it's high vis. I've put it on before, and someone's turned around and was like, "Are you actually wearing that?" It's like, yes. Like, why? I'm like, well, one, it's waterproof, and this time of year we get a lot of rain, it's freezing outside, and it's high vis, so I'm going to be seen. And they're like, yeah, but why are you wearing it? I'm like, one, to keep the water off as much as possible, and two, because so many people don't see us during the fucking day, that if I can give myself a little bit more chance of being seen at night time, I'm going to fucking do it. And a lot of people will turn around and say things like, oh yeah, but it's better to look cool and be dead than it is to wear a high vis and be alive. I've heard someone say that before. It's stupid. So the double whammy is to be safe and to be seen. And the safe part of it, also, obviously being seen, you're going to make yourself a bit more safe, but don't be scared to go a little bit slower, especially if you've got cold tyres and they're not warmed up yet. Like, this is a 40 in a minute, I'm going 35. There's a car behind me, I don't care, as long as I'm safe. It don't really matter about anything else, because I've got a home that I need to get to. If there's someone in a rush, they can overtake me, can't they? I've had it before where there's cars close behind me, and in wet scenarios you don't really want them there. So instead of being a foolish bastard and zooming off and potentially slipping out and whatnot, I just put my indicator on, pull to the side like I'm on a 50cc and let them overtake. Don't worry about them getting annoyed stuck behind you. Just ride your own ride, be safe doing it, and if it's dark, there's no shame in wearing a high vis. I've usually got one in my pocket, a vest, if I know that I'm going to be out when it's dark. I haven't got it with me today because, well, it's midday. There's no chance that sun's going away anytime soon. But if I know I'm going to be out when it's dark, or there's a chance that I could be out and it gets dark, I've always got a high vis with me. There's no shame in it at all. So that is my 2 cents and my 5 things that you might not know to keep yourself safe winter riding. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit different to speak about safe things instead of doing wheelies and whatnot. But don't you worry, the wheelies are coming. I've done a few on this one already. They're not great. I'll get them good enough and then I'll start posting about it. But that's for another video. But thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment down below if you've got any more winter riding tips, as if we can keep each other safe, it's going to be a nice and wonderful thing. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Adios amigos.